Welcome back to Deep Thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. On this rather rowdy Saturday night here in Huntington Beach, California. We're going to have motorcycles going by. There's a party across the street. I don't think you can hear them. Imagine that you were spending $60 million a day. $60 million. That's either buying one of the best aircraft we could make in the fighter pilot realm, maybe two or three of the other ones. And you don't have to show anything for what you're doing. Military, we kind of expect them to serve and protect, which seems like they're not, right? United States is being destroyed systematically. That's a whole nother video. No, but you start this apparatus. Here's some tobacco on my lip. You start this apparatus and you convince people that it's a worthy apparatus. You use Hollywood to get yourself off the ground. And then, you just got to show up every once in a while, do some pretty interesting things, at least in the narrative of what you're doing. Make a good show on TV. And shit, man, we all like seeing rockets take off. If you ever seen one happen in real life, it is definitely a sight to hear first and see second, even though it's going to happen in the opposite order. Remember how they were going to go back to the moon in, 2024? Yep. You think that's going to happen? Remember I said, the only thing I could think of was that if they knew something was going to happen between now and then, well, then they could say anything they want to today, which was probably about 2 years ago, I guess, 2018, 3 years ago, I guess. And sure enough, something happened. Oh my God. Now all the obligations disappear. How convenient. For $60 million a day, this organization is as next to non-existent as anything I've ever seen in my frickin' life. I mean, honestly, a day. Jeez. That's huge, man. You know, it started to dawn on me that it's so funny, man. It's like the NASA Enigma is like an onion. You saw the onion. When you first saw it, you're like, man, that's an onion. And then you start peeling off the layers. And you're like, whoa, what's going on inside this thing? And so you become aware of one level of the scam, then the next level of the scam, and the next level. Just like that day in September. At first, there was one level of the scam. And then we now know some objects weren't even there that day. And I think that's sort of how we're digesting NASA. I just recently said in an episode, they want you to believe that Lee Harvey Oswald shot JFK. But at some point, he made a cell phone call down to the Secret Service and said, could you get off of his motorcade because it's going to be really hard to hit him in the head and the throat and all these other things that happen if that Secret Service guy is standing right there. Especially if I don't kill him on the first shot, the Secret Service guy is going to throw himself on top of JFK and stop my shot. So get off the car, would you? Mm-hmm. Just incompetency, right? Right. Now, some of you have been hip to this, and I think we've all been hip to this, but we haven't focused on it, which is this notion of the materials by which these objects were made. We make fun of the lunar lander because once we started looking at it and realizing, holy cow, this thing was a hunk of junk. I mean, you don't even have panels that seal off properly for the compartment. It looks spacey, right? Shiny chrome and shiny gold, supposedly. Not chrome, but copper paper, and which is super duper conductive, Now, there's all the anomalies of the landings and all that good technology we've talked about several times, of which we will review a little bit on this one. We were aware, because of Bart Sibrel, I keep saying his name wrong, that the capsule, the Apollo capsule, is made of 1/4 inch aluminum. Aluminum has never been known on planet Earth to shield itself or its occupants from radiation. But we know now, one, that the Van Allen belts are there, something that wasn't readily known in '69, even though it had been sort of theorized on paper, even though the astronauts weren't told about it, such that when Sibrel interviews them in 2003-ish. They have no idea what the Van Allen belts are. Go see the film he made, Astronauts Gone Wild. Again, it was a timely name, and he's kind of a jokester anyway. He's a funny guy. Today, that name doesn't make any sense to us. He just released his book, too. So if you want to get a copy of that book, go to sibrel.com. I'll put the link down below, but there it is for you just in case. I'm yet to order my copy. I need to get one from him. But the Van Allen belts are so powerful now. They start at 1,000 feet before they hit their complete wave frequency. And that's just what we're told. Who the hell knows? It would seem like sort of in the bowels of it, it should be pretty damn intense. A little bit more than just the edge of it, right? That Project Orion, which was announced, revealed that we didn't go to the moon by saying that they hadn't ever put human flesh through the Van Allen belts before, which is what the project was geared to do, which is it's a good objective, right? They said it was canceled. They launched, got data. Bart went and tried to get the data off NASA saying, look, this is public data, man. This is just the scientific information about the Van Allen belts. It's like how bright is the sun? It's not secret information. And they denied it and said it was a matter of national security. Yeah, national security to keep the hoax of the moon mission going and all, interstellar, interplanetary travel covert. Now, again, there might be other vehicles, maybe all these rumors about, backward engineered alien stuff. There's dudes that say they've spent time on the moon, soldiers. Maybe. If that's the case, then they've got this group of Nimrods completely quarantined, which seems like very unfair to those folks. But I guess if you did have these super secret sort of S4 Bob Lazar vehicles, then you don't just want to let them out. You don't want to you can't just tell anybody because then everyone's going to know. A UAP was seen taking off from Area 51 during the recent filming of a movie, which on Thanksgiving Day, you might find out what movie that was. The crew of the film walked around a corner and watched a UFO object levitate off the runway and go bam, like an instantaneous thing up into the airs. Okay? No reason to lie. These people have no reason to lie. They're talking to their best buddies on planet Earth. And there's more than one person who saw it. All right. I don't know if that's a whoopsie. I don't know. It seems like a ridiculous thing to have a film crew present while you're going to launch this thing. Or maybe they know something where they're going to be springing this on everybody so it won't even matter. Or everyone's going to die of the drink. And so whatever. There will be a point when they have put enough of this graphene oxide crap in everyone's body to piezo us to death that it won't matter. I mean, they'll be able to show you everything. See, it's like that moment in all the James Bond movies where Dr. Evil kind of character tells Bond everything. You always do that. But the interesting thing is that there's a ton of materials that we don't really think about. And the funny thing is it should have been fairly obvious to us at the very beginning. We, as citizens of the world without any empirical data from anywhere and chock full of lies by the organizations we surrender so much of our subscription to be in whatever country you're in, called taxes. They say your childhood is the free trial. And then you still have to pay the subscription for whatever country you're in, which kind of makes sense, right? We don't know what the moon's made out of. It looks pretty ashy to me. All those craters are actually boiled marks. They're craters, but they're not made from asteroids or outside debris. They're too circular. And as I always say, there's so much of the moon missions that cannot be tested before you actually do it. You just can't test it, especially with 1969 technology where we didn't have computers to realistically drop. Let's just say you could actually get there physically. Some sort of drone, some sort of rover. I mean, it's a much lighter payload than a bunch of dudes having to carry their environmental systems, all kinds of redundancy because it is humans. If it were, just a robot of some sort, well, you don't have to have any redundancy. It never has to come home. Very small rocket. Therefore, you could build something like a Saturn V and use all that thrust to send this smaller payload to the surface and take a look around. The fact that NASA's never done that is proof we've never gone. Period. There ain't nothing on Mars. I don't care what you think. There's nothing on Mars. A helicopter drone flew on Mars, 1% atmosphere. The speed by which that propeller would have to turn to create any lift at 1% atmosphere, which I think is technically and feasibly, mathematically impossible, no matter what they tell you, it would liquefy the metal. That's how fast that thing would have to turn. All bullshit, and everyone's just sitting there with a great big spoon shoveling that stuff down their gullet. So we have a capsule that couldn't possibly protect them, which, again, would negate the need for Project Orion. Why would you need that? We went to the moon 8, 10, 11 through 17, even 13 was theoretically went there and went around. The Russians supposedly did it. Everyone's jumping on the bandwagon. Now, China sends a rover to the moon, and it's like brown dirt until NASA gets to them and rebatches the photographs to look gray. Israel jumps on. They said they lost connection with their satellite. Then they claimed they got 2 hours of footage. Then it was dead. Russia supposedly put a rover on the dark side of the moon. Well, how convenient, man, that, Wait, by the way, you can't see it right now, but inside my house is a whole party going on of gray aliens. Well, you'll never see it because I'm never going to turn the camera, so just take my word for it. Hey, don't you want to know what gray aliens do? So if you believe that claim, then you sit and listen to me for hours, lying to you. It's interesting. I don't know if society devolved. I think it did. But we all know that we've had videos on YouTube that were just utterly phenomenal. Even Google videos had amazing videos leaked by all these guys that knew that we didn't go to the moon, and they were part of the program. They were part of the special effects teams. They'd figured it out by being external teams. They know how special effects works. A lot of the inside people who worked on it defected and created videos, all scraped off the net. Google scraped theirs, then Google buys YouTube, then Google scrapes through YouTube ownership all those videos. So now we're down to crap. For the ones that they really can't legally get rid of because they know it'll be re-uploaded, and I don't know where the hell the folks are that had the original videos. Maybe they're scrapped. I don't know. Disinfo videos start coming out. Or they take, people who they know, they discover they're shysters, right? They're organically created in society, and they're creating these really bad videos. They're working with Photoshop or Final Cut to create fake, situations that aren't real. And they promote them to the front of the line. So that's what you get when you search on anything you're trying to find truth about. The new one is Telegram, which might be renamed Tell-A-Lie. And it's not Telegram's fault. It's just the amount of uncensored crap up there is ridiculous. And there's part of this whole thing about freedom of speech, but once you start seeing lies up there that are really bad, you think, okay, guys, you got to get in here and start moderating a little bit of your content. I saw a video today on Telegram, I think on Space Shot 76 channel. Some white guy, old farm fucker. He's filming his video. He's filming his monitor with his camera to break the, the clarity of the video and the trademark of the video. He's trying to tell you that the Three Gorge Dam in China just broke, and that this big flood was coming down this runway where there's a river, and it's massively overflowing and stuff. What the scumbag was doing was taking the horrible suffering of Japan during their tsunami, during the Fukushima earthquake, and he was re-showing it as a Chinese dam break, paying no respects to the people that per second are losing their life in this reel as the flood's coming through and tossing cars all over the place and popping them over. And it just sits up there and someone will download it and show their friends. So that's the kind of stuff going on. And there's just second by second by second. And there's people that don't understand science, and so they get misconstrued. This whole thing about having a magnetized thing in your body, yeah, I bet there's definitely something that's at a real low level, but people are sticking cell phones to their bodies. It's in the middle of the summer. It's in the South. They have thick skin. They're sweaty. They're sticky, and they stick something to the side of their body. It's like it's an old parlor trick. It's been around for hundreds of years, sticking tons of spoons to your body and stuff. The dude from the Skeptic Society just passed away. He used to bust that one all the time. And everyone just forgets. It's a duplicate. So NASA uses every single trick in the book, but the main trick has always been, as I say in several of the videos, out of sight, out of mind. You can say anything you want. What I honestly believe is taking place is that there's a community of geeks who love scientific space travel stories. Obviously, they think they're looking at legitimate stories. They'll read all the rags like Popular Science, Scientific American, etc., etc. I think that there's at least a body that's watching sort of how this data is kind of propagated to the people. And again, there's no big uprising of any kind. Everyone is completely satiated with what's going on 24/7. I think maybe this channel might have one of the largest groups of people that are sort of fed up with it, you know? But as long as SpaceX is doing something interesting, then NASA doesn't have to do anything interesting. If Russia does something interesting, NASA doesn't have to do anything interesting. As long as someone is doing something spacey, then NASA can always be the last one in line to be accountable for showing any progress in the world. Now, they do a lot of, like, fake Mars shots, but think about the amount of time between Mars shots, and they're all pretty basic things. And again, the software is out there to create those fake terrains. It's out there in spades, man. Plus, you have to always keep in mind that there are probably shots that are done here on Earth, and there's shots that are done in CG, where it needs to be super duper detailed, perhaps microscopic shots. Well, that's just something in some petri dish somewhere. Where it has to be a landscape. Well, it depends. Does the landscape have to have any massive features to it, like a huge crater that doesn't exist on Earth? Well, then that can just be done in Greenland, Iceland, someplace up north where the people that generally look at this information have no experience being in those areas. And they've been caught in a couple different photos doing that kind of thing. And they're up there anyway with all their buggies and stuff, right? For the more grand things, especially with the Mars BS stories that are going on, is that there's all kinds of superstructures on Mars. If anything that they've ever told you for the last 50 years about Mars is true, there are mountains and volcanoes that are 15 miles high. That's very, very high, people. Okay? Then there's this gash down the middle of the equatorial region of Mars. There are pyramids, regardless if the face ever was a face or not. Why not drive up to it anyway, right? I went and surveyed the surface of Mars based on the, probably extremely fake data about the surface of Mars. And again, as long as they draw a pretty picture and give you, the Google Earth version of Mars, then you're like, oh man, this is so real. Check this out. It's got all the details, right? You're just looking at a role-playing map of a Dungeons & Dragons session you're about to have, except the GM is NASA and Jack Parsons' laboratory. That's all you're looking at. It's fun. It's cool. If it was entertainment and if it was a big maybe Mars looks like this, then man, you still might give them $60 million a day. But when they tell you it's real and you need it to be real, boy, it's funny. Scientists laugh at religious people for making up shit and believing it. And again, every religion that you believe is absolutely 100% true, and every religion everyone else believes is complete bullshit. And that's sort of how scientists review all religion in most cases, right? At least documented religion, right? So there are people that follow it without any need for validation of anything. Buddy of mine, big special effects guy, who knows we didn't go to the moon. Knows it for a fact. Okay, he did his deep dive and he's talked to people after that. And again, the smartest people he knows we didn't go. The less smart, think we still went. Just incapable of doing research, incapable of deducing anything, have no scientific backgrounds. Those are the people who think we went. Outside of the kids in aerospace who are raised to think that, again, still they're just sheep, right? But he calls me up about the little helicopter drone. Do you see what we did? I said, dude, it's 1% atmosphere there. That didn't happen. Yeah, that's right. They said there's 1% atmosphere. That's all he says. He won't go to the next stage of the sentence. Like, dude, you don't think it really happened? Or I'm like, dude, like, come on. We know they didn't go to the go to the moon, which means that they are liars. The whole organization is based on lies. It doesn't mean they're not developing interesting technology with our $60 million a day here in the United States. They are. But for what purpose? I don't know, man. Why is it that NASA exists? Which was that one guy said, not a space agency. I thought that was awesome. But we have, people like Lazar coming in. We have Area 51. We have Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, supposedly in a mountainside south of Area 51. We've got S4, which is, again, this big door that's in the side of a mountain. It look like the mountain, and then it opens up and you go inside. Which the only reason why the big doors exist is that would be the only way you could get a craft inside and out of this institution. It's not that human beings need the giant doors. Sounds pretty sci-fi. Sounds pretty cool. I mean, even if science fiction invented that concept, someone in the military turned around, do you think we could do that? And someone's going to go, hell yeah, we can do that. No problem. What are we going to put in it, Well, we dug up those things, We supposedly shot down those aircraft, right? There was an interesting video that went on Telegram, which, again, I have no knowledge if this is true or not. It's very interesting. But they said that people in the Antarctica who go down as researchers, one of them is a very good friend of mine who spent 3 weeks there digging up ice cylinders out of the ground. They said, there's two types of ice that we actually recognize down there. And one of them is the cylinder ice that we all know, which has varying levels of opacity and transparency and shades of white and what have you. And then he goes, then there's something called sky ice. And sky ice is this fascinating blue ice. And what was so funny about this video was the guy is trying to obviously make it very special. And, if it exists, it's something really wild. But it's just shaped like, it's colored like sky. I mean, it's really the color of beautiful blue sky. And supposedly it's so cold that you can't hold it in your hand. But then while he's narrating this, he's showing picture after picture of gigantic pieces of sky ice being held by human hands. And then he said that it can't be... It's just so funny, these shitty conspiracies, man. You can't take it to the United States, which is because it just evaporates into nothing. If it warms up, it'll just dissipate. So they have to keep it down there, which is in, like 80 below zero, 100 below zero easily. But then he says if it does dry out, it actually shrinks. Like a what is it, the things we used to melt in the oven, right? Shrinkadinks, yeah. So it completely contradicts his own story right in the middle of his little conspiracy thing. It's a neat idea that there's blue ice and that it's potentially the firmament dome ice, that makes a blue sky. But right away, just makes himself look like a complete asshole, lying to everybody. Because there has to be some sort of repercussion for lying to the people, even if you're coming through the truth movement, right? We don't like all the people lying to us in government, do we? And medicine and all that kind of stuff. We talk about, they won't be able to walk down the street after this reset happens. Mm-hmm. Well, let's just say you got your way. Some secret military is going to jump out of nowhere and defeat the entire world's global elite. Ha ha, ha ha ha. And you get your way. What happens to all these people who have been lying? And saying they're taking phone calls with the most secret people on planet Earth on open lines. What about those people? Is there any repercussions for their existence? Or are we going to go, well, at least you're on the right side? So Elon Musk is creating a Starship, right? It's basically one of his normal rockets with this big veneer on the outside. And when you started looking at the rocket tests, you got to see that it's a funny car. What is a funny car? Well, it's a drag race top fuel car with a body on the outside that's just literally like a big rubber top on top of it. Anytime there's an accident, that body just flies off and you get to see the cage underneath, which is a much smaller compartment where the funny car is, right? Nothing wrong with that. But that's what Starship is. Starship is a normal little skinny rocket with this big exoskeleton on it It's supposedly, okay, again, they're running tests on the rocket moving this enclosure up and down. Looks like your mom's, face massager, right? But it's supposed to carry people. It's supposed to have like little apartments in it and carry astronauts to Mars. All right, well, okay, if you're not building a funny car, you're building a real car that's gigantic, that's supposed to go 325 miles an hour in 2 seconds. Then there is no rubber outside. Those are actual doors that actually work, and there actually is a need for all the space underneath the funny car body. But Starship is a funny car. It's a funny rocket. It's just an exoskeleton that's surrounding a really thin substrate rocket in the center. You watch their videos, the rockets are going back and forth, trying to make sure it can land or something. Okay. Right in front of your face, complete lies, complete misdirection, and I guess that's totally cool. And the other thing too is a rocket that is going to escape Earth's gravity, even with the fake science that got out there. You are moving, 11 miles per second with this frumpy little exoskeleton on it? Okay. All right, because that just works, right? It's just this flappy steel on the outside. And you got to understand, man, we've had welders for SpaceX come into our cigar lounge who were literally pulled off the street with no welding experience and made welders. And then they're building these amazing rockets. I mean, some people are that damn good, but I mean, come on, you're taking a risk with a giant space agency. You're going to have the best welders in the world. Dudes that have been doing like oil pipes underneath the water at $450 an hour. You're going to take those guys and say, you are a master welder. Am I right? Am I right? Yes, you are right. Okay, how'd you like to be above ground, making the same wage, but you're going to make rockets instead? I need those beads to be absolutely perfect. I need your 20 years experience on every single seam of everything that's going on. That's the way you build a space agency. Not just walking into Central Park and picking a guy jogging down the street, Now, the one thing that we can always give credit to, and I always do, is the Saturn V rocket. It was a behemoth thing for its time. And it took off beautifully. It did. A lot of predecessors did not. But that baby was unbelievable. I mean, just think about it. You are part of the moon hoax crew in 1968, 69, and you have an objective to launch this building into the sky, and it can't blow up. Because we've told people there's human beings on that thing. Whether they were or not, you don't know. You don't know. Space Shuttle Challenger goes up and blows up with Christy McAuliffe on it. Sure seems like everybody but one dude, who was the oldest guy on the spacecraft, is alive and well today. And again, one of you said that you were in Minnesota and we're going to go visit one of the guys, get back to me. I don't know if that dude was bumped off or what happened with that. Never heard back from the person. Hope they're okay. Sure was a lot of twin brothers, man. It was like landfill and, Beer Fest, right? Guy dies in the movie, but they don't want the actor to be gone from the movie, so they bring back his twin brother in the movie to play his role. So it's the same actor, and then he says, why don't you just call me my brother's name so so it's easier to do it. It's just brilliant, right? He remains in the movie. It's like he never died. Absolutely freaking brilliant comedy. And that's sort of our space agency, isn't it? I mean, I want those people to be alive, and I don't know why people would be happy that they're alive. People always want the people to be dead. If you say like one of these FF events wasn't real, and that maybe little kids didn't die, maybe a person in a mall didn't die, maybe someone didn't die, they're like so pissed at you that those people might still be alive. Even if they're liars. Who knows? I mean, who knows how people get victimized into those things. All right, is it better they're alive? If nothing else, you could talk to them later. One of my friends had dinner with one of those people. Now, 2024 is a very interesting number, especially if you go to Deagle.com on the Wayback Machine and you study, I think it's like 2020, about June, you start looking at their predictions for the population of the United States in 2025. I have screenshots of this, which I will share during this video. So if you're coming through audio and you want to see this, go take a look. But go in our locked Facebook group on Facebook and you'll see it there, or go to deepthoughtsradio.com and you'll see it there. Okay. They have the population of America down to 100 million in the screenshots that I saw. They've since taken off this prediction. China did not reduce at all. 1.4 billion, stay 1.4 billion. No growth is actually a hell of an accomplishment for China, to be honest. But someone online who broke the story, they were able to find the Deagle Wayback Machine with a green interface at 69 million. So you round it up to 70. I found 100 million. Well, we're 340 something right now. So that's 240 million people dying in the United States of America between 2021 and 2024. Now, guess, I wonder how that's going to happen. Oh, I don't know. Health regimen, anybody? Okay. So then NASA could say whatever the hell it's going to say. The very lie of its invention is absolved, expunged, because there won't be enough society around with technology, money, and the ability to have the conversations that we're having right now. Can you imagine that? You're listening to me right now. You probably had a pretty good day. You got your house, you got your apartment, you got your car, you got your life, got your family. And in 3 years' time, all that's gone because no one would pay attention to Rosa Corey. Rest her soul at 50 years old. This May, Georgia Guidestones tell us what happens. Well, that's interesting, right? But now imagine, reverse engineer the formula. You have a space agency that is told bull-faced lies. You have agencies that tell bull-faced lies about who killed who and the history of all these things. And because of the lies getting exposed and them being apprehended and potentially punished for those lies, if nothing else, at least all their bank accounts are zeroed out and they spend their time in some prison somewhere, they're like, it's easy to get them to do things, right? Well, if we don't get rid of all these people, they're coming for you. And man, it's just 2 steps away from them exposing NASA's lies, let alone GPL's lies, let alone all these other lies from the governments and the agencies around the world that enforce all this faux stuff. So because we allowed the lies to get through, because we told ourselves a bunch of bullshit out of a need to feel important with the space program. Oh, man went to the moon, blah, blah, blah. You're going to die. Potentially. Because those of us that are actually revealing the man behind the curtain in the city of Oz we're starting to get very successful with it. Remember, it's a domino effect. It's a house of cards. One card falls, pretty good likelihood the rest of the cards are going with it. But there's definitely, in my opinion, a material breadcrumb trail to the lack of science for all of the container transit vehicles that were inside the Saturn V, from the Apollo service module to the lunar lander. If you just pay attention, it makes no sense. Lunar lander being actually technically too small to fit 2 inflated astronauts inside. A parachute that was compressed to the density of bark, somehow popping out of the top of that thing and saving the vehicle when it splashes into the water. I mean, we've seen that footage, but we have no idea if it's some sort of, B-2 bomber, B-57, whatever, some other vehicle way up high that just kicks it out with a nice parachute that works. 3 giant parachutes the size of your house. Okay. They never went anywhere. Maybe they did achieve low orbit. Maybe. And again, don't worry about shape of the Earth. If the Earth could be flat, it could be round. And on both situations, in the firmament dome, you have buoyancy theories that will leave stuff up there. And for round theories, you have ethereal winds creating gravitational waves. Okay? By the way, in our private Patreon chats, we have the most awesome shot of the possum coming right over here next to the cement block and sniffing around and walking past. Just in case that's something you want to see. But now, what would have been sort of the visual requirement to convince people, especially 69, and potentially after, that they did go to the moon, that those vehicles actually qualify as real scientific vehicles that can not only make the trip, but insulate the occupants, 3 people, from being eaten up by the radiation, being able to somehow navigate to the surface of the moon, somehow stopping its 17,000 mile an hour speed, okay, with those little retro rockets, right, that are firing in the vacuum of space. Even if there is ether out there, it's still a vacuum of space when it comes to propulsion rockets in space. What are you pushing off of, guys? To get into the air, you push off the land and the oxygen, even if it gets thinner and thinner as it goes up. Why do you think they turn a rocket as soon as it takes off? Well, have you ever seen jets and biplanes stall when they go straight up? There's a lack of atmosphere there to create lift on the wings, man. And so you have to constantly scrape as much volumetric air as you possibly can to create the lift on the wing to get yourself up. But with a rocket, you can push for as long as you have fuel down below. But as soon as you don't have any fuel, well, you better be out of sight and out of mind, because that thing's going to come down. What goes up comes down. It's just the way it is. Remember, the service module and the lunar module combine when they're head-to-head in this thing. The Earth, I believe, I calculated at 3.6 billion times bigger than that vehicle, which means you have to defeat the ethereal void gravity wave of Earth so that you can escape it. I don't think so. But what is the visual qualification? The visual qualification is that they have to create something that seems plausible to your brain. And there's 2 ways of doing that. If you are totally and completely informed about all of the astrophysics it takes to theorize this journey, not do it, but theorize the journey, then the vehicle has to make sense to all the astrophysicists at the time. This, just trust us, just trust. It's a lot of the science behind the works, right? Well, just trust us, man. It works, man. I don't know why it works. It just works. A lot of that stuff. But for an average public that has no knowledge of these rocketeering paperwork findings / theories of how this is supposed to work, it just needs to look out of this world. Something that you have never seen in your backyard. You've never seen it in a park. But it also has to have an iconic element to it, right? You remember seeing the famous old black and white silent movie. I don't want to mess it up because there's 2 and I get them confused. But it's the one where it's the little bullet, where people get inside this bullet and it's on like a railroad track and it goes boom and it hits the moon right in the eye. It's a brilliant film. And then they get out on the moon's surface and mess around, and then they come back home. So they created that exact shape because it has an iconic validity to mankind from, 1905 or whenever they made that film. And so half of it is something that is familiar to you. And the other half is something sort of out of this world that kind of had to address the issue of, okay, the bullet thing from the silent movie slamming into the eye of the moon, it's made of cheese, of course, is not going to make any sense to anyone. So we have to take that previous theory, get as close to the moon as we possibly can, get in orbit, 17,000 miles an hour, and then disconnect this thing off the top, rotate it around, and then start falling down into the Earth. And remember, the lander was underneath the service module after takeoff. So that thing had to disconnect, come back around, and hook its head together on what was the top of the rocket so that the astronauts could crawl through the hole. I'd like to see that footage. Remember the Star Trek episode from Deep Space Nine where Benjamin Sisko and his son get into this craft. It's sort of like a solar wind craft, and they take this crazy journey together to trace the steps of one of the most historical vehicles that traveled across space for a particular period of time. They recreated that event and they built it. They built it themselves in the Deep Space Nine base, right? We haven't remotely tried to go back to the moon with this perfect technology, other than Apollo 13, which has an explosion that it was never really documented. But of course, we fixed the problem because 14, 15, 16, and 17 went and came back, no problem. So whatever it was, we don't need to worry about it, man. We got 11, 12, and we got 6 out of 7. Sounds like there's pretty much a low risk. Probably have to wear a mask, though, when you get up there, right? We haven't done it again. And they tell you this line of crap. Okay, well, it's too expensive to go back up there again. Oh, is it really? Is it really? You don't think you could make, say, a tube radio from the past pretty damn cheap in your living room? I mean, the tubes cost a little bit more nowadays because we don't make them anymore. But we could say, okay, where there was a tube, you're allowed to use anything modern to replace it. So out of the Saturn V, you just say everything that we can replace it with, any type of valve, any type of engine, whatever. We can use better engines. We could use better fittings, but it generally needs to look like the Saturn V. Even inside the lunar lander module, instead of having this rote memory crock of shit computer inside, you put a decent computer in there, some little supercomputer in there, quantum computer, right? You put it in there and we can just reenact the whole thing. Get up there and do it again. Take a rover with you, by the way, because, hey, after you optimize this rocket with better engines and all this other stuff, the Russian ones that were 2.5 times more powerful than our most powerful rockets in 1995, you can have all kinds of room to not only take doom buggies with you, you could probably take a television set, and you could probably bring back, 10 tons of rocks. And you're going to have HD cameras up there, widescreen. You're going to be able to do all kinds of stuff. We haven't even come close. So in terms of building the Saturn V, getting back up there again, it's going to be cheaper. Way cheaper than we ever paid for it in the 60s and 70s. Guarantee it. But we don't, because we never went. Isn't it interesting that, there's more protective insulation on a 747 than the Apollo module? You've been in a jet before, right? How much distance is between the actual exterior of the fuselage and your body on the inside? 4 inches? Okay. And glass is glass is glass. Okay, that's the other funny thing. There's a little round portal window inside the sort of trapezoid window. Where did the radiation go? It's just glass, man. It's going to go right through that glass and nail everybody like a microwave oven. It's going to go through the capsule too. Well, let's just take their stupid theories. They never even addressed the threats. They never addressed oxygen production. Oxygen, for being on the moon, in 17? It was on the moon like 24 hours, 25 hours walking around on the moon. Okay. International Space Station recently got a film crew from Russia, supposedly. And film crew being defined as a group of people, I think, are going to film a fictional thing up there. Why not? It's a movie set anyway. It's this underwater thing for outside spacewalks, but otherwise it's some set somewhere. Why not? Keep the scam going. Got to feed the public their religion. It's funny because the United States of America, when I was a kid, didn't quite have as much of these things I'm going to mention here in a second, but it did happen. People saw Jesus Christ in their toast. They saw him in a cloud formation. But in South America and in Europe, you had, the Queen Mary crying every once in a while, and the whole crowd would get around it and look at it. And the church knew what they were doing. Again, this doesn't injure what may or may not be true about that story, but these were orchestrated events to create the surge in belief. Look, God is still here. God is still making statues cry. He won't come down and save you from all these devils that are raping your children, but he's got time to make a statue cry. Right? People getting stigmata. Their wrists bleed as if they got stabbed by the nails. And then some people will have their wrists bleed. Some people have their palms bleed. Okay, well, most of the scientists know that if you put stakes through the center of your hand and then they suspended you on a cross, it's going to rip out of your hand. So this is why they always put it between the two bones at your wrist. Okay, which is it? Which is it? Your hand or your wrist? Because there's stigmata of all different kinds out there. Apparently God is getting half of it right and half of it wrong. Every once in a while I just do the hands, NASA's the same thing. These are all archetypes of creating belief systems to create money laundering situations, hence control and suppression and repression of the people that pay the taxes to finance these things. Now, I get, feedback from some people, especially one person. If I mention anything about space, I get this brilliant comment. Space doesn't exist, Mark. What the hell's wrong with you? Okay. Let's go with your firmament dome thing. One, there's tons of flat Earth videos out there about things that float in a flat Earth model. Obviously, in a flat Earth model, the sun and the moon are partners. Are going around up there, and they're floating up there somehow. Wouldn't you call that space within the dome, right? And the other thing is, if you do a 180 arc for what you think is the diameter of this dome, which is what, 65,000 miles around or something, that center apex of that arc is so up there, it might as well be space, okay, dude? So it's a relative statement. I don't want you to get lost because people feel this superiority complex of I'm a flat earther, you're totally wrong, I'm not listening to anything else you have to say about this whole thing. And it's like, okay, you're lost, man. Put it inside your model and make it work. The Saturn V doesn't have to go up that high. Even in your model, it ain't even close to the top of your firmament dome. Not even close. And again, if, the sun and the moon are approximately 3,500 miles up in the air based on that model, then that's as far as this thing has to go in the sky to sit there and float around. It's quite a ways up there. But maybe it can float at less than that with the buoyancy of oxygen and the atmosphere and the water and all this other stuff. Okay. You still got a game to play. You still are in this game of the facade of NASA. Now, there is the thing, I probably talked about it like way back in season 2 with, episode, 26 is the first one, and 165 is the second one. 165 is the most views on this entire channel. You'll have to go to the website and click over to the all new remastered season 1 to get 26 on the new channel. But I'm telling you, episode 520 is my crowning achievement of the recalling of the moon hoax. But you might want to also see a video called How They Faked It, which is about the moon missions and exactly how they faked this thing. I'm telling you, it's probably not 1,000% correct, but it's probably in the 90s, okay? And it's probably missing data, but all you need to know is the Achilles heel of their fakery, and then you'll have an extra reason to sleep at night, right? Now, one thing that's very interesting, and we've only mentioned it, and it does relate to the materials that are used to create these ships going through these Van Allen belts, is that NASA figured out, and especially the Defense Department figured out, that there's electromagnetic static up there. It's on video. You've seen the NASA thing where they, the space shuttle, which I believe could probably achieve, 200 miles up. They send out this coil of wire, and it automatically starts electrifying because it's being stimulated by the natural electricity that's coming out of the bowels of the earth and screaming invisibly until it hits a conductive material, and then that cable vaporizes and starts floating off into space. If the Van Allen belts are there, which Project Orion would attest to, and you put craft up there that has anything that's made of any conductive metals whatsoever, and the lunar module is one big giant battery of insulation. I mean, this thing should just have vaporized and popped. And you're getting yourself into a field of electricity that's so powerful that is protecting us from stuff in space. Let's say that outer concept is real. Aside from cooking the astronauts inside the vehicles, these vehicles themselves would start just popping and sizzling, as things went inside arteries like windows and those other stuff. The control panels should start freaking out. Not maybe at 200 miles, but definitely around 375, 400, when you get about 40% towards this fully electrified field. Like Bart Zabrell reported in 1998. And I remember this in real life, but I can't find the article because CNN doesn't go back as far, but they published an article saying that the Van Allen belts were more dangerous than they previously thought. And I think the miles up were like in the 400s. They'd gone way beyond the altitude that they had been, about 45% up, that the astronauts started seeing shooting stars when they had their eyes closed because the electrical field going through their bodies was insane. It was hitting their rods and their cones in their eyes and giving them sight with their eyes shut. And everyone's puking and getting radiation poisoning. They have to drop, clean up the mess, and then land. And they scrapped the entire mission from existence. I went back and looked at all the mission logs, couldn't find this anywhere. But let's go back to the theory that space doesn't exist in general. Now, we look up and we see a bed of what we call stars. Might as well keep calling them stars. I have seen in the Griffith Observatory, I looked through a telescope and I saw Jupiter with that little spot in the lower left-hand corner, just like a magazine. Could have been a trick. Could have been a trick. Could have been a gel in there, somehow focused in the right way. It looks organic and real. Could have been. But I was in my buddy's backyard with a 10,000 power, I always say that wrong, 10,000 power telescope, reflector telescope, big fat thing about 14 inches, 12 to 14 inches thick. And we saw Saturn. We saw the rings, okay? So these weird bodies up there. And of course, a bunch of people believe that those are planets with other civilizations on them, where you get Saturn worship and this, which is the black box worship all over the world. What I have not seen with my own two eyes, but, I was a little astronomy kid. The first time I ever was in a world where my school teachers and the geek fathers in my area looked through telescopes and took photographs with cameras was in Massachusetts, but it was just barely. And then when I came back to Kansas, my teachers were taking these kind of shots all the time with, little timer cameras and stuff. And they would get kind of nebulous shots, horsehead nebula shots and that kind of stuff. Pretty crude. That we're getting something. I have personally never looked through an optic and ever seen anything like that ever. But the one thing I definitely have not met a person that has ever seen is a galaxy. You get all these beautiful pictures of galaxies. Many of them are artist renderings and you don't even know it. They're so damn good. And I have to say, hats off to any artist in the world with either 3D software or brush and some paint that can make something look like a believable galaxy. But Hollywood does it all the time, way before special effects existed. So there's a bunch of stuff we at least used to believe in that we've never seen with our own eyes. We just trust it. It just seems cool. Get a bunch of books with these pictures in them. They told you they saw a black hole. Processing petabytes and petabytes. The stories are always so elaborate. They're designed to be elaborate because they're designed to convince you to give them $60 million a day in the United States of America. And many of you European countries contribute as well. So your money's being taken as well. But it's a form of national pride, right? We're not only whatever race we are, but we're the race within the race that can get to the moon. They can get to Mars. They can see things in space that no one else can see. And that's why the game is now for sale. Go see my episode called NASA for Sale. All these countries are now just buying the program. It's a white label product now. Yeah, we'll see. We got this software. What we're going to do is, here's what we got. We got this little nook on the moon. We got this little nook on Mars. We got this little nook that we can create a bunch of fake images. You're going to give us your space budget. So you're going to tell your people it costs you $1 billion to build this rocket. We got another rocket that's owned by this guy, John Hurt, and he's gonna shoot it into the sky. It's actually a communication satellite for cell phones. We're going to claim that that's your rocket that's going to take your little probe up there. It's not. It's really our thing. And then eventually you'll wait a few hours, before it gets there. And we have the whole thing orchestrated, When the Israeli rover supposedly landed and they were filming the crew. And this is where you can always find the guys that are involved with the scam because they never react the way that you would normally react, or they super duper overreact to the statement that these vehicles have made it to the surface. And of course, there's more people that haven't been told it's a hoax, so they actually naturally respond to what the fiction is, right? But yeah, the Israeli one, I remember there's two guys sitting on a couple chairs up against a wall, if I remember right. And this shot is hilarious. It's one guy kind of paying attention to the cue, right? And he's kind of waiting for the cue, and the other guy's just kind of looking at his phone or doing something else, and then this finally, look, think about it. You are sending your very first probe to the moon. There's some drone or some rover, right? And you're off doing something else because it ain't that important. And this guy finally goes, boom, and bumps his buddy, and they all start clapping really fast, hilarious. If you pay attention to the GPL ones when the Mars rovers lands, and you really read the physical body language of the faces of the people that are there, there's a few dudes that will have a shit-eating grin like, this is fucking great, isn't it? These motherfuckers think we're really there. That's great. When does that deposit hit my Swiss bank account? Oh, it's already there? I got you. If there's so much money to go around, then cut everybody a check who's going to carry this into the press, carry this into the people. Why wouldn't you say we win? Neil deGrasse Tyson's like, man, I don't have any retirement. I got on some television shows, that kind of thing, but you mean I host Cosmo and keep this whole bunch of crap going? I get a check? Yeah. And guess what? If you hustle your agent, every single appearance you get on TV, we'll load you up. And if we don't just load you up with a straight up check, we'll make sure you always have a show. You'll always have some money. Just avoid any debates with people online. And if they ever do debates, they'll pick some poor guy who can't hold his own in the conversation. And then Neil drops the mic, right? And all the neophytes of the world who are worshiping their new space religion post it all online. Oh man, look at how he just served up that dude on a silver platter. When I grew up, you're supposed to be the expert. Nowadays, you're just supposed to know of an expert. Doesn't have to be anyone you've ever met before either. You just know of an expert. What? That personality online. Bill Nye the douchebag guy said there's more than 2 biological genders in this world. All right. Well, initially he said there were 2. Then he said there's a bunch. Paycheck. Can you hear the paycheck? Can you hear that opening sound effect from Pink Floyd? Dark Side of the Moon. Money. Boom, bam, boom, 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 boom. Mm-hmm. I think that the ultimate reason why this stuff is only in your brain and my brain, if you care about this kind of content and you're passionate about getting to the bottom of some of this stuff and piercing the veil of lies and getting behind the curtain in the city of Oz, the number one thing that keeps everyone else at bay is having not only a super bad education, if not a complete lack of any education, but the short attention span. I got a buddy who's 49 years old. Prides himself on knowing all of the conspiracy stuff on planet Earth, from that letter that went around to just every single thing. And he'll put a video on the TV, so we have to watch it, and then he'll get on his cell phone and start watching another video. Full blast volume. So we got the TV, his cell phone. 49-year-old guy with the shortest world record attention span of any human I've ever heard, even theorized in a meme, in a funny video on TikTok. This dude has the smallest attention span. So how does that guy ever learn anything? I mean, seriously, how do you learn anything if you can't pay attention for 10 seconds of a video that you chose to watch in the first place? Unbelievable. And the world's just saturated with this. So I wanted to loop in on mud flooding for a split second, because we've had this this series of incredible weather phenomenons around the world, of which mysteriously the press is not covering. I mean, I have seen, I don't even know what's true, so trust me, I understand I could have been duped, but flooding in downtown London, I mean, really intense, like broad daylight. I mean, broad daylight, as if it's not stormy, but like a foot of water gushing into the Thames. I think that's the river, off of some of the, overpass runways, some of the bridges. But China, Japan, Germany, France, America, South America, Africa, just India, tons of one in India. There's not a country that hasn't been touched by monsoon floods, but they don't last very long, but they're there. Now, one of the more depressing theories is that they're putting stuff in the storm clouds such that anyone who walks out and breathes the air after one of these rains is breathing a lot of metal dusts. Could be that that black magnetic stuff that happens to be in the drink, getting ready for an EMP attack on humanity to wipe everybody out in one day. Just one day. Boom. You want to wait for audits to happen? You're smoking fucking crack, right? But let's go to the mud flooding for 1 second. Now, for those of you who've never heard this theory before, it's a very simple theory. It's a firmament dome flat earth theory, which is that the owners of the dome use floods, hence the biblical story of Noah, to reset the world. It's a very simple way of exterminating all living beings on a particular area of the world. Again, if man only exists on, say, an African continent, which I don't think has ever been the case, just there, I don't believe that at all, then you would only have to flood the regions where man has been able to exist. Plucking from the collection of men, whoever you think is good, best females, best males, and their siblings, and their offspring, maybe their siblings too. Then you flood the whole place, and it's really found its heart in the fact that every time we excavate through archaeology down into a city, there's always a city underneath, and a city underneath that, you rarely just find straight up bedrock. But again, we haven't really dug a tremendous amount down. But in Egypt, we have evidence that they have literally landscaped and dug and carved chambers at least half a mile down, about 2,500 feet down. Now, there are a lot of landscape issues where if you build a town, say in a valley, that is surrounded by mountains or hills that don't have vegetation on them, over time, the rain is going to skid slowly the mud from those hills down onto the buildings, and you will get one side of the building has a lot of dirt on one side, and you're going to have a door that used to work, and now it's covered with mud, and then you're going to take the second story window and knock it into a door with a staircase that goes down. That happens too. It's very organic. Nothing special about that. But I think it's interesting that we're in this iconic moment where society is obviously being reset. It's being reset on every single conceivable metric that you could write on a piece of paper, and we're getting tremendous floods. I don't think we are getting some mudslides and that kind of stuff. But again, they're kind of just getting started, aren't they? I got a shot the other day. I was grabbing my food here locally, and this kind of overcast cloud, easy for me to say, was coming in, but just above it were a string of chemtrails spraying above it. So seeding it into existence, augmenting it up. At some point, they're going to test their technology prior to probably pulling the complete trigger on this, if there's any validity to this at all. So if there is a region of the world that is ever reported where everyone in a village, everybody in a city, everybody in an area of a country just collapses, that's them testing the technology, getting ready for the big one. And maybe there's nothing that can be done. Who knows, right? We don't know. But I just find it really ironic that NASA was pressed to come up with another mission date to get back to the moon, and it was 2024. And Deagle, so clearly being a international aggregate site for all countries of the first world nature, at least for GDP, GNP, population, military budgets, all this kind of stuff. Soldiers in the military for various countries have been reporting this data into Deagle for a really long time. How else would they have the data? I mean, seriously, someone making it up? And they modified it. You go to the deagle.com, DEAGEL.com. You will see, it says on the front, data for, I believe it's 2017 data that's up there. That's the latest data. But it used to say, I have in screen capture, again, waybackmachine.org. You go to waybackmachine.org, you type in deagle.com, and it gives you a calendar. And on dates, there's little circles. Go to 2020 and go to, I believe, June. And then click on that. It's very slow because it's pulling up an archive of all those files. And you'll see the 2025 estimate on the front page. And you click list of countries, you click United States, and most of them are scrubbed. Most of them are scrubbed, but there still is the 100 million one up there. I just showed a friend the other day. So for now, it's up there. When you go further in, where the estimate was going down, it reports a 404, 401 error or something like that because the data archive has been erased. But just to pay attention, do your math, and you'll see the data go down. And all of Europe's the same way. Gutted, right? So a long time ago, there was a fairly detailed sort of rumor, I guess you could say, that the world elite wanted the Earth to be back to, say, like 1,000, well, probably even before that, but like, let's say 0 AD, like 0 between AD and BC. Meaning, the highways are yanked up and destroyed. The buildings that were built, all of these homes and everything, all destroyed and pushed down into the ground. And you think, well, geez, that would take a lot, right? And then you look at Paradise, California burning to the ground. Jets that flew by and hit them with directed energy weapons and burned them down to ash. Glass burned, metal burned. A lot of cases, chimneys disappeared. But right next to it is a bush that's just fine. Trees are just fine, not even burned. There's a house out in the middle of nowhere that just burned right to the ground. No trail of fire going to it at all. And even if the dude set his house on fire, it doesn't burn all the way to the ground to white ash. It just burns up and then gets put out, right? So we're seeing tests. We're seeing bizarre weather patterns. I think there's two things that I'm paying attention to. I know this is slightly tangent to the topic, but I think it's important. When all the people of the world that we know are bad people all travel away from civilization on the same day, then we know something's about to take place. They're going to their hiding place. But then we can never find that data out. Who knows? But the other one is investments in the future. So there are various corporations that are obviously very, very deep state. So if they are building a gigantic amusement park expansion or something for the future, it's either they're doing that in the meantime just to kind of act normal, to move money around, or those individuals in charge of those projects are not on the in, very believable as well, or it's a sign that the disinformation has gotten to a level where we're being freaked out and nothing's going to take place at all. I mean, things will take place, but nothing, cleansing the earth kind of stuff is going to happen. And then 2024 will be really interesting for NASA. But they can claim that obviously 2020 health crisis is the reason why all that's going to be moved out for quite a while. It doesn't matter because there's absolutely no excuse why in 50 years of having been to the moon, supposedly, that we never were able to go back with a more streamlined vehicle. There's no excuse for that. And I always want to mention this one little thing that Bart Sibrel told me. He said 747 took over 165 attempts to get off the ground. And we were already in an aviation state of society for over that was the 70s. So the Wright brothers actually flew in 1904, didn't get their patent until 1907. We were fighting with biplanes by World War I in the teens. So, 60 years at least of aviation history, and we couldn't get the 747 off the ground until 165 tries, but going to the moon was an instantaneous success. Unbelievable. And flying around the moon, even if you could accomplish that, does not give you any ground data. It doesn't account for slowing down a vehicle that's already going ridiculously fast. 10,000-pound thrust engine ain't going to do it. It's not going to be able to do it. Pushing off nothing, it's not going to work. SpaceX admitted that they have reached the absolute pinnacle of the weight that they can send to Mars. At least they're doing decent math these days because Mars' atmosphere is again 1% of Earth. And so with all the rockets firing when they go to the ground, if the payload's any heavier than the last one they send, it'll crash into the surface. And there's only so much balloon encapsulating we can do to not destroy the payload inside. Interesting. So let me know what you think. I think NASA's being really quiet, hiding in the shadows of everyone else's accomplishments. SpaceX, I think, is a diversionary agency. that has taken over the mandate of getting things into orbit while NASA can sit on the sidelines and give you fake pictures of Mars. $60 million a day, people. $60 million a day. If a college degree's average cost is $100,000, then what's $1 million? It's 10 degrees. It's 10 college degrees for some student out there that wants to go to school. So $60 million a day is what? 600 times 10. 60 times 10, excuse me. So 600 degrees a day are flushed down the drain for that agency. Mm-hmm. Okay. Hopefully we start standing up for what we believe in and spreading this information around. I don't hear the moon thing discussed anywhere besides this channel and other channels. It's just, if you're into it, you're into it. If you're not, you're not. And if you think that the resistance of this world is a small population, those who discuss these conspiracies are just a speck on a speck, man. Nothing. So anyway, if you haven't been to deepthoughtsradio.com, please go. It's got everything you need. I'm going to give you a short bumper today. For all the Patreon and PayPal people, thank you so much. Take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.